1380 KCIM Sports presents KCIM Sports Rewind. A look back at the week in high school sports. Brought to you by St. Anthony Rehab Services. Here's Sports Director Jeff Blankman, John Ryan, and Jeff Honnold.
Hey, it's the record now, Honnold. We're not even into our program. We have a correction to make. There is no Jeff Honnold. Or now Jeff Blankman.
Wait, I'm here. Hey, time out.
Jeff Blankman today, I should say.
Blankman's on vacation. When's the last time he took an actual vacation and not doing anything sports related?
You know what cracked me up? Kim Hackett, our general manager, said, "Where's Jeff at?" I said, "I have no idea what Jeff does on his spare time. I really don't."
When I talked to him, he was just going to try to recharge. He really, other than going to see his new nephew in Wisconsin, I think he's doing nothing.
Yeah, I think so. Just taking some well-deserved days off here. So we're going without him this morning, but we do have a couple of special in-studio guests. See, we had to bring in two people to fill the time of Jeff Blankman on the half-an-hour show.
It's kind of like umpiring royalty over here, isn't it?
Oh, I should have brought the royalty music out.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. With us, we have half of the normal listening audience of KCIM Sports Rewind, Dan Pomeroy, and joined by his partner, Jim Molitor, longtime umpiring crew here in the state of Iowa.
Do you listen to us when you're mowing?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
I try to catch this show on Tuesdays.
All right.
So for punishment.
What are you doing normally on a Tuesday morning at 9:30?
We just got done with break, so I have to give a shout-out to the guys out there. They wanted me to give them a shout-out.
Out at the Muni?
Out to Muni, the grounds crew.
There you go.
Working on their mowers today.
I have a complaint. Why'd you guys have the T-block so far back last weekend? Gee, Christmas.
I didn't set them. Sorry.
I know. Hawkinson.
Take no
Probably.
responsibility for that. Dan Pomeroy was once again here with us. You guys have wrapped up kind of a nice long career at the state tournament in Des Moines. First of all, you guys did that for what? How many years were you guys a team down at the state tournament in baseball?
Well, I've been there 29 years, and Jim, you've been there 15? 15. And the 15-some years we've been umpiring together, a lot of those seasons we finished at state together. Sometimes they split us up on different crews. But
did you miss it this year?
Yeah, sure. I went down there and talked to some of the umpires and stuff, you know. I mean, we're in semi-retirement. We're still working, and we worked quite a few tournament games up to the state tournament, but we just thought with our age and the longevity we've had there, it was time for us to get out of the way and let some younger guys get in.
I've been in radio for over 30 years. I've been in semi-retirement that whole time because I don't work all that hard either.
I'd like to argue with you.
Well,
You can't, can you?
Arnold doesn't know what semi-retirement is yet, probably. So.
I'm a little awash in here, and Hawkeye fans, I'm a little out of my element here. So
You are in trouble.
yeah. Is your skin burning with the cyclone stuff in the background?
Yeah, well, I'm just glad there isn't too much Nebraska stuff in here. That's what I'm more excited about not seeing.
Now, Jim, I'm sorry, we were down at the Coon Rapids Baird played at Dowling. And I think I met one of your old mentors down there, didn't I?
Yes, you did,
And
Larry
he wasn't
Barr.
really taking credit for your umpiring abilities. I'm not sure what that was about.
Yeah, I don't know. No, my first partner, Larry Barr from Scranton, he and I went all over this side of the state doing a lot of games. Spent a lot of windshield time together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's probably what got us started correctly for both Jim and I in the early 80s is we both had great mentors at the beginning. I mean, Jim had Larry Barr, who was pretty renowned in the state as the best rule book guy in the state. And I had Fast Eddie Spindler, who had quite a reputation himself.
You don't earn the nickname Fast Eddie for no reason.
And he had been mentored by a minor league umpire, and so Ed and I in the 80s did a lot of college baseball and high school baseball. So I learned all the nuances from the right guy.
So what is it that drew you guys to umpiring? Because you're well known around this area. You've umpired a ton of games and things. What is it that drew you to that line of work?
I did it because I still wanted to be involved with the game of baseball. As you know, it's not a great paying job, but you just got to be around the kids and the coaches, and it's just to be part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Dedham, so that's fast pitch softball, 16-inch softball, and so I grew up around ball my whole life. And then when I was at Iowa, like Jerry Fleshner, we both took the officiating class. And I think sometimes you sort of get bit by the officiating bug. So when I came back in the 80s, right away I was working high school basketball. We had our football crew that worked high school football. Jim and I were on the same football crew for over 35 some years. and then started into baseball. Fast Eddie was looking for a baseball partner, and he said if I kept my mouth shut and listened to him, he could make me a good umpire. I don't. There's a few coaches in the state that might disagree, but I think we got close to that.
I would disagree. I know Fast Eddie really well.
So, what was the favorite part for you of umpiring all those years? What kept you going for all those years? Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick with it that long.
I think some of it too is you build some relationships with the coaches, and we always had a little thing with, you made real good friends with the catcher, especially one of those that was like a sophomore that if you went back to that school for the next 2 or 3 years, you had the same kid, and they become pretty good friend, and you see them and they know who you are, and that's what's kind of neat too, is that part of it.
Any of those kids stick out? Any of those catchers? I mean, not bad wise, but I mean some of those kids that were just so much fun to be around. You look forward to being back and seeing them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you've been umping for now closing in on 40 years like Jim and I have, I mean, we could get a legal pad and list hundreds of catchers. I mean, just the kids right here in Carroll. I mean, the Hempstead kid, Marky Hempstead, was a treat behind the plate.
He still is.
Quinn O'Brien was probably one of the best catchers Kemper ever had, and now a coach at Johnston, and turned into one of my best personal friends. I mean, you could just go on down the list. I mean, we've had a lot. The Berg kids have all been great catchers at Kemper, and we've been close to all of them. And then, of course, we're all over in Western Iowa and all the 4A schools. So a lot of these kids we've known for a long time. And Jim's right. That's the secret to staying in it, is that the relationships you get with all the coaches, and specifically in baseball, the catchers, because baseball is unlike basketball or football. You might get to know the quarterback, or if you're the umpire, you might get to know a couple of middle linebackers because you're standing by them the whole game. But baseball, you're in football and basketball, you may only have a school 2 or 3 times. In baseball, it's not uncommon to have the same team maybe a half a dozen times, maybe 10 times during the season, because you do a few home games, you catch them on the road, and so you're gonna get to know that catcher pretty well. And so the relationships you build in baseball are terrific. And for me, also, it was the rule book. I mean, I got into the rule book so in depth that the Athletic Association sent me to Indianapolis for 3 summers to represent them on writing the rule book. So that's always fascinating, just the rules of baseball.
We'll go back to this now, the concussion thing, and where guys get hurt. You guys do spend a lot of time with them. Has that changed? Do you look more now that you know those kids a little bit better? Do you kind of peek at their eyes and make sure? I know you guys took care of them before by walking off, but you guys can see probably more than the coach does if they're not quite right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think we're really at times overcautious. If when somebody gets hit, or they slide and something's not right, we spend a lot of time killing the ball per se to make sure that everything's good before we continue. And the kid may want to go right away, and it's like, no, we're just going to take a second here and make sure.
Take a little breather in there, make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
Well, a few seconds isn't going to make a big deal.
No.
Well, and you guys see them. I mean, you know how they slide over to catch a ball. You know how their hands move. If there's something off about that, you're probably going to see it before anybody else sees it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got that kid that's trying to dive to make a catch out in the outfield, and you see his hand go rolling over. I mean, you see that while you're trying to watch him catch the ball. So, you say, uh-oh, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah, talk about, I mean, you guys probably know every single little back road in the whole state because you've been around all these different stadiums. Talk about the difference between, like you said, 4A ball and A ball. Was there any preference for you guys? Did you like to do, or did you love all the games?
Wow. Well, I just love baseball. I mean, I'm not bored in a 1A JV game because, boy, that's when all the wild stuff happens, at that
That's when that rule book knowledge is going to come out.
That's where the rule book comes in good. But those kids are excited just like the 4A kids in Des Moines are. I'd say maybe the difference, and Jim would have to piggyback in on this, is the pitching. You get down in the 4A in Des Moines, like we did the Urbandale-Waukee sub-state final, and those 2 guys are bringing it. I mean, we're in mid-80s with vicious curveballs, and the Waukee kid threw a little changeup at me behind the plate the first inning, and I I blinked my eyes and thought, what the heck is that? I haven't seen that for a little while. And so, yeah, the pitching probably is a little bit better up there.
Oh, and the hitting too. But it's some of it is too is the way they play the game. At a 4A game, I mean, it's a race to get on and off the field with the teams. In a 1A, they might just lollygag around, and it's like, okay, here we go.
Yeah,
so you got to keep them moving.
We don't want to paint all the 1As that way or the 2As.
No,
I mean, there are coaching staffs and teams and programs that have great baseball tradition.
Let's say Waddle would not let you.
No. He made you run out there, Jeff.
I know, he got me running.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'd say that to answer the question in a long roundabout way, it's just a little bit better pitching, a little bit better hitting as you move up the ladder.
What about parks? I mean, we'll start with Coon Rapids Bearden. When that thing first started, it was a park. It was just, you had some fencing and you had a little bit of grass and a lot of rocks, and it's grown into a beautiful field. Are there others that you've seen develop over the years turn into just beautiful diamonds, or some go the other way?
Well, the Iowa High School Baseball Coaches Association awards district diamonds of the year every year and state diamonds. There's only 2 ball fields that have been named Diamond of the Year in the whole state twice, and that's Coon Rapids and Carroll. And so the 2 best diamonds in the state are literally half an hour drive for all of us here in Carroll County. But yeah, Jim and I have been lucky to work all over. I mean, I've umpired in Rosenblatt. I've umpired high school games in the old Metrodome, Hubert Humphrey Metrodome. Jim's, you've worked at.
I've been at Rosenblatt.
Before the air conditioning got put in, or after the air conditioning?
Right. And so we're all over it. But Audubon's got a wonderful field.
Audubon
now.
does, yeah.
Yes.
They sent me and districts over to Story City, beautiful ballpark over there. And then, of course, Johnston's new field with all our Kemper Loonies coaching them, O'Brien and Steffes and Barta. They have a fully AstroTurf field. It's wonderful.
So I noticed in Denison they have the grass baselines. How common is that? You just don't see that very often. Usually it's
it's not very often. I know I worked down at Trainer this year, and they've got a nice ball set up. But theirs is that way also, like Denison's grass lines going down to first and third, and it's not very common, but
it takes you a while to figure out what you're looking at. Something's not right, but I can't figure out what's missing here.
We're going to have more Jim Molitor and Dan Pomeroy joining us. We're going to talk about the All-Star Classic coming to Carroll coming up, and more about their career in games and high school baseball in general coming up next on KCIM Sports Rewind.
As the athletes at your house prepare for hard... Services at 794-5000 for sports injury and treatment rehab.
It's KCIM Sports Rewind. No Blankman today. It's John Ryan, Jeff Honnold, joined by Dan Pomeroy and Jim Hollander, the longtime umpire officiating crew here in the state of Iowa and right here from the area. Let's talk about the state tournament in particular. Principal Park's a gorgeous place. Anything a little bit different about the games down there that you guys umpired? And what's your biggest memories coming out of all those years spent down at the state tournament?
Well, I guess I had to have, for 2 years in a row, I had a gentleman by the name of Calvin Matthews who pitched for the University of Iowa a couple of years, and he threw hard. And I think the neat thing was as I heard this story later from Dan. His senior year, I had him behind the plate, and they played the same team. They played Alta-Aurelia both years. It was a first-round game, and I had the plate both years. And the last batter was coming up, and Dan said he and Rod Berg and was it Benny or Benny were sitting there by each other, and they basically said, "Watch, Jimmy's gonna." It had 2 strikes on the guy. Jimmy's gonna ring him. I mean, the pitch couldn't have been any more perfect than right down the middle of the plate. I rung him, and it ended up being about a 85, 90 mile an hour fastball. Somebody said later. I mean, the guy could throw it. He could bring it, that was to hear that story after what happened, and then, and the best part was the year before, I think I had the fastest game at the state tournament with him pitching.
Mm-hmm.
They won 6 or 8-0, and it was an hour and 5 minutes.
Wow.
Wow.
That's like a softball game sometimes, a lot of times.
But that's a couple of them that were.
Oh, we've been lucky, and we've done a lot of title games, and I've been personally lucky and been behind the plate for a lot of championship games, and boy, they all just sort of meshed together after a while. I mean, at Principal, I've been there for Southeast Pokes. I did the Johnston, Michael Barta and Quinn O'Brien and Steffes. I did them a couple of years ago behind the plate when they won the championship, and so that was a good memory. But Jim and I both go back to prior to Principal too. I mean, Jim worked games here in Carroll, so did I. We worked some state tournament games there, and then a lot of the times when I was partnered with Father Collison, they sent us down to Marshalltown at the same time the Carroll tournament was going on, and I had the plate in the Marshalltown 4A final there when they had Jeff Clement, the national leader in high school home runs, and at that time it was the largest crowd ever to see a state championship game, and so you don't forget those.
How about the crowd? Talk about those. Does that make a difference to you guys? I mean, you're supposed to block all that stuff out, but it adds to the atmosphere. It adds the excitement for everybody.
Oh yeah, I've been at a few of those. You need to, be very careful, and we've got something we also do too is when we get to a place, it's called exit strategy. And you go ahead and take that.
Yeah. Well, I think what Jim's referring to is, and we've all thought this, and a lot of umpires do too. We've worked, probably 20, 25 championship games at state. I can't think of many championship games that have been bigger than the sub-state final games we've worked. I mean, because for the sub-state final, whether it's a 1A or a 2A or 3A, the whole darn town turns out. It's a massive crowd. Jeff, you've done all sorts of sub-state finals. It's a big deal. Yeah. And when you get there, you want to make sure as an umpire that you have an exit strategy to get out of the ballpark with the ADs, with the athletic director or the tournament host, with out going through the crowd, because one crowd's going to be really disappointed, and some of it might be because of what you did or didn't call.
You guys have been around forever, so it's Dan, I grew up with you umping me.
I believe he just said you umpired in biblical times. So
he did.
Been around forever.
There's a reason why I got moved to the outfield, and that's because Pomeroy's behind the plate. I think he told Waddle I had to go out there. But, all the different things you guys have seen and done, does anything really stand out, one of the coolest events, maybe something that you guys had for a kid or even mentoring somebody?
Well, we've become very close to a lot of the Carroll High and Kemper players over the years, and a couple of times where we dress, everybody knows where the umpires dress at Carroll. It's outside by the football stadium, and sometimes in their senior years, we'd have them over to the car for some pops and some Dedham bologna or some Dedham beef jerky or something. But a lot of times, we often went with the catchers down to Rancho Grande or something and have a taco after the game, and so
just talk stories.
Yeah,
how's your season going?
And so that's probably been one of the really cool things about it.
So the boys' state has really changed in the last few years. I mean, you had Wilco and those guys running it for years and years and years, and it was great because we all knew them. But you've kind of Smoky Bar, you've kind of had a changeover now, a new one. Talk about the differences. I think there's probably good and bad in both of it, but what have you seen with this new crew? They seem to be listening a little more to you?
Oh, very much so. Todd Tharp and Jared Chiswick share the baseball duties for the Iowa High School Athletic Association. Louis Curtis, supervisor of officials, also works with them with baseball. But they've made all sorts of changes. It used to be when we get to the state tournament, heck, we didn't know whether we were doing the plate or first or what until about half an hour before the game. And now they let us know days in advance, and that helps us prepare for four-man mechanics. I drove down to Boone on a couple Sunday nights ago and helped them with a webinar on four-man mechanics for the 48 guys that were in state this year. And so they've been way more workable than they ever have been.
How about the level of play? Has that gotten better over the years with kids specializing so much now? And I know I've asked you this question before. You said before that teams like the old 70s and 80s teams from Kemper could play with the teams of today. I think you were on record saying that. How about baseball? Has the game gotten better through the years?
I think so.
Yeah, there's
I think so.
especially at 4A, there's specialization. Some of those kids on those really good 4A teams, that's the only sport they play. And they have their own 2 bats, and they've been taking lessons since they've been 5, and they're really, really good. But can the other teams play? Yeah. The 85 Kemper team with Mark Fieldmeyer and Nick Nurse and John Oswald and Tim Caspar and that crew, Roger Berg, yeah, they could play with any of these teams. You know?
How about you, Jim?
Oh, yeah, the specialization's there. There really is. I mean, you can tell.
So it makes for a better game today than it was maybe
I
yesterday.
think so. I think so.
Let's talk about some other things. You guys said you kind of bowed out of the state tournament. You said you just want to stop doing it to give a chance for other umpires. There's a huge shortage of youth umpires out there right now. What would you tell somebody who's thinking about getting into it? I mean, you guys have been there, done that for years and years. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of people that want to step into your shoes.
Well, you got to get mentored properly at the beginning, because if you don't learn the nuances at the beginning and where to be and how to get there and what to do during the game, then you can get brutalized by the coaches and the fans, and then I think you immediately lose your enthusiasm for continuing this career. And so that's probably number one. And then you've got to have a partner too.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly
that's a big
what
thing.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
That somebody that you can work with, be familiar with, of what's going to happen. You know, I mean, the mentoring part's good. I mean, that's the best part of it. But I mean, if you got 2 of you that can get mentored together and learn to do things the right way and where you need to be, and it's always, I mean, you want to go to a game and get there with somebody so you can talk about, something that may have happened the night before when you were working or a week ago, or, I mean, Dan gets hundreds of phone calls from coaches and whatever from around the state about this, that, and the other thing. Well, once something like that happens, now we talk about it as, as a rules thing, or or how would we have handled that differently? Or
I think I sent him a text from a Merchants game.
Yeah.
A question.
Yeah.
What's this rule? Blank goes, text Pomeroy, he'll know.
and to further elaborate on your question, it's not just baseball where they're hurting in numbers. I mean, the Athletic Association says their retention rate now, averaging in all sports, is 17% for year 3. So be you a boys soccer official or a basketball official or a wrestling official, only 17 of 100 of them see year 3.
Wow.
They go year 1, year 2, and they say, you know what, this isn't for me, or I've decided I don't want to do this. And so they're concerned about their numbers, and I think they're worried too that it's all guys that are in their 60s like Jim and I that are in that bubble that are going to completely retire. I mean, Jim and I are just semi-retired. We're going to keep working baseball around here, but they're worried about their numbers down the line.
Is there anything? You two guys are perfect examples of guys that should be able to mentor new young people, even if they threw it in as a 3-man crew and brought some guys with you. Has there been any talk of you guys teaching at all?
Well, they had a mentoring program in both wrestling and baseball last year where they identified first or second year officials could get with a mentor, and we signed up for one. It was a young kid from Panora, and Jim helped him immensely. He drove all the way up here. Jim helped him get his equipment out at Graphic Edge and talked to him. He came and watched one of our games at Audubon. So I think that helped, but I don't think they just had great participation in that, and so I don't know that they're repeating that, but they're certainly brainstorming in Boone how to fix this. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, we give you guys a lot of static, but you two are truly 2 of the best, and it's really scary to think that you got taught by Spindler, but he actually taught in school too. That's even scarier.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to know you guys. I'm glad I got to play with you in there. I mean, some of our most fun games were with you doing that. You knew going into it as a player that things were going to be right. Whether it went our way or not, you knew it was going to be called. But talk about the different coaches. I mean, you've seen Waddle grow up, of course. You've seen a lot of different coaches come and go. You saw some that were, when you were starting, were getting close to their retirement. Some of those legendary coaches you got to do.
Any epic meltdowns from coaches?
Oh, Waddle.
I
I
don't
had phones back then.
I don't ever remember any coach just really going, I guess what I want to say, haywire on,
No, well, I think we know most of the coaches in the state, and so I think that's one of the reasons the Athletic Association assigns you to some of these bigger games because, I don't think we're any better on ball, strikeout, save, foul, fair, catch, no catch than any other umpire. But we probably know the rules a little bit better, and we also have pretty much seen every situation, and it's a management issue. If something goes haywire, they know that we're not going to freak, and we're going to allow the coaches to come out and say their piece, and we're not going to freak on them. And so it's a management thing.
I know you talked about pace of the game one time, Jim. Is there anybody that is slower to the mound than Randy Snyder? We used to clock him with a calendar. That dude had the slowest walk to the pitcher's mound, I think, ever. Anybody beat him? You're like, wrap it up, and he's only halfway to the mound.
No, I don't know.
Well,
most of them get out there and get done, and you don't have to hurry them along too much anymore. You just start walking, and they start walking too. So,
yeah. Well, we've been lucky. When you've done this for 40 years, we have been able to umpire and share a beverage with some of the great coaches ever in the history of high school baseball in the state, and several of them are right in this town. I mean, Jerry Spieler and Bill Whelan, you're not going to find nicer guys than that. And two guys just recently retired this year that are very close friends of ours. Steve Hansen, the Marshtown coach, in the Hall of Fame. Dave Middleton, the North Polk coach, in the Hall of Fame, just announced their retirement last year, and we were lucky enough to go over and do their final game against each other at Marshtown this summer. So that goes back to what we said earlier. That's the reason you say it. The relationships and the friendships with the coaches are really what drives you.
Well, we got to talk about the All-Star game, and we're going to do that here coming up next on KCIM Sports Rewind.
As the athletes at your... in the newly renovated sports performance facility. If an injury is keeping your athlete out of the game, call St. Anthony Rehabilitation Services at 794-5000 for sports injury and treatment rehab.
Yeah, we caught Pomeroy trying to sneak off camera, put him back on now, though. So
Did they get the picture of Blankman I sent them?
No. Or, a prime time to take a shot at Blankman, and we didn't do it this week. So
I know. I got a
Amazing.
really good picture of him making one of his stupid faces.
Well, that's pretty much all.
That's all I got on my phone.
All-Star game coming up this weekend here in Carroll for the third or fourth time it's going to be here at Carroll Stadium, right?
Fourth time. We had it in 95, the very first year. We had the state tournament here. We also had the All-Star Series. And we had it, I think, 2002 and 2009. And now this is the fourth time.
Tell us what's going to happen now. And there's going to be a lot of good baseball, a lot of good baseball players in town coming up this weekend.
Well, the 64 best seniors in the state are going to be here. And they're divided up into 4 teams, 16 on a team. Large school west, small school west. They sort of divide the state down the middle. And large school east and small school east. And it's mostly 1A, 2A, and the smaller 3As on the small school teams, and then the larger 3As and all the 4As on the large school teams. So it's a great thing for the kids. They're going to get to play at one of the finest facilities in the state here over these 4 days, and they play on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday during the day, and then the Constellation Championship game is on Sunday. And then also all the coaches in the state will be here because this is where they'll pick the all-state teams, the super team, the banquet at the Carrollton on Saturday night. They will announce the player of the year, the academic all-state team. So
way more
it's a
than
big
just
deal.
Games on the field. Yeah,
It's a big deal. All the honors and awards are here.
And Jim, you said you played in the second ever All-Star game.
Yeah, I did in 1978 in Iowa City, and I got to. I think the first game I DH'd part of the game, and then I caught the end, and then on Sunday we lost, and so we had to play the other team that lost. I don't remember if it was who we played, but I caught Randy Norton from Iowa City Regina, and he threw about the first 6-7 innings, and I caught, and he had a no-hitter going, and we ended up getting beat 4-3.
Oh, man.
But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And
You know, both Carroll and Kemper have been part of the Volleyball All-Star Series, and they host that. And it's just a wonderful event. Luckily, I got to be a part of that. Anybody gets a chance, you need to come out. These kids are out there. They're competitive, but they're having fun. You see smiles on their faces. They're enjoying themselves, but yet they play hard, and it's a really fun time.
Well, Randy and Lori Schneider have taken all the work on this All-Star Series. When Father Collison and I and John Waddle and some of us and Barry Bruner ran it the other 3 years, we had a large committee. These two have done it almost all on their own. So the town of Carroll owes them a huge debt because they're bringing in hundreds of people for this weekend. And remember, we got two players, area players on the team too. Christian Cook from Coon Rapids Baird and A.J. Schreck from Kemper are both on the team. And then you have two Kemper graduates coaching the large school West. Michael Barta is the head coach, and Quinn O'Brien's the assistant. So a lot of Carroll connection. You should come down and support them.
You guys going to be on the field at all, umpiring?
I am Friday night.
Friday night.
Yep.
Yeah. Jim's umpiring, and I'm master of ceremonies, the banquet on Saturday night at the Carrollton, and I get to tell the same jokes every year because it's a different audience every year. So,
Your repertoire's pretty low.
yeah, that's right.
Well, guys, I tell you what, we appreciate your time here coming in talking about umpiring. And again, if somebody's actually interested, just look you guys up. I'm sure you'd love to, reference them and tell them how to get into a great deal like that. So, again, thanks so much for your time. We certainly appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you.
Again, Dan Pomeroy, Jim Molitor join us this morning on KCIM Sports Rewind.
When you need to